Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of stories affecting the Sikh community around the world. And in the United States, we revisit that old problem of beards in the military, as this time a Sikh Marine addresses Congress with a powerful speech and a wake-up call to the US administration. And believe me, this is a guy Pete Hegseth really wouldn't want to mess with. And as promised, we have the viral video that should give Sikhs a little hope against the backdrop of rising hate crime. All that and more on today's show, but joining me as always is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. I hope everyone's having a wonderful start to the week as we are. Don't forget to stick around to the end of the show, see what comments made it, and of course, you can send your comments to the comment section below and make sure that we are there to not only enjoy your comments, appreciate your comments, but also they might make them on the air just like the ones at the end of the show tonight. Stick around and find out. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed. And James and I, in the meantime, will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world, and we will indeed take a look at loads of those comments at the end of the show, so do stay tuned for that. Right, James, what are you going to start us off with this morning?
It seems to be a never-ending story here in British Columbia and across Canada, and that is, of course, the ongoing extortion attempt and extortion crisis that's happening not only here in Canada, but there's also been an individual in breaking news that has been arrested in California for making extortion calls to residents of Metro Surrey here where I reside. And he has been charged with interstate telecommunications for the purpose of issuing death threats, and I'm sure that more charges will be coming. The U.S. indictment actually does specifically link this individual to the Cousineau gang, and media outlets are, of course, calling on the government, saying, how are you not putting pressure on India? This individual is locked up in an Indian jail, and yet he is still leading extortion and gang activity around the globe. So again, it's another call for action against the Cousineau gang, who, as we all know, have already been labeled a terror organization by the government of Canada. With that stated, of course, this comes in light of another shooting yet again here just the other day on Sunday. And that was another restaurant. This was on the border of North Delta and Surrey along Scott Road and or 120th, depending on what side of the road you're on. It's known as both, but around the 8,000 block. This time, there were employees inside of the business when the shots rang out. And again, putting people's lives at risk. Fortunately, nobody was injured in this targeted attack, and we also know that this has just been repeating itself. Another auto body shop just down the street from this location was also shot up again on Thursday. This is the second time for that auto body shop along the border of North Delta and Surrey. So essentially it's just one street that divides the two cities. But of course, the activity is very fluid across that main road on both sides because businesses are owned there by the Sikh community, and they are being targeted over and over and over again. And that's where we have to really focus and put the attention again is back on politicians and others to intervene. As they were cleaning up from this shooting and doing the investigation. Meanwhile, down the road at the World Sikh Organization had put together the community forum, and I'll play a little clip here from Global News that covered the information in a brief summary of what was happening at that community forum.
Into this room Sunday, pushing politicians and police to do more to tackle the threat of extortion and violence in BC's.
We're seeing an increase. My apologies. I'll just restart that because I forgot to push the volume up higher for you. Government representatives.
Dozens of people packed into this room Sunday, pushing politicians and police to do more to tackle the growing threat of extortion and violence in BC's Lower Mainland.
How is your party prioritizing this issue?
Through a moderator, community members were able to ask questions and voice their concerns. Many here say they fear their safety. Safety isn't a priority amid recent talks between Canadian and Indian officials.
There has been more action recently we've seen on extortions and public task forces, but in terms of the messaging from the government and the renewed ties with India, it just feels like it's not being taken seriously.
The relationship right now, having investigative dialogue between the two nations right now is better.
The town hall being held just hours after another Surrey business was targeted in what police believe is an extortion-related shooting. Police say 2 employees were inside the restaurant when it happened, but no one was injured. More than 100 extortion cases have been reported so far this year, and Surrey's police chief insists officers are making some progress.
In October, we had 11 shootings. In November, we had 2. So far in December, we've had 2. And we are out there every night, and we are protecting some of the residents that had multiple shootings. We believe we've disrupted some shootings or prevented some shootings.
Some on the panel pointing to changes needed in national immigration laws after the Canada Border Services Agency says 15 foreign nationals facing extortion charges have applied for refugee status.
It looks to me, at least, that there are people misusing the immigration system to escape judicial or legal accountability, and so we're going to have to look at ways we can stop that.
The CBSA says about 100 foreign nationals are being investigated for alleged extortion, and those found to be inadmissible to Canada on serious criminal grounds would be issued a removal order and have their refugee claim scrapped. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Surrey.
So as you can see, that report came to us, I believe I said global, but it was CBC News. My apologies for that. However, as you can see, they're talking about the ability for the government to withdraw those applications for the refugee status. However, as I stated in last night's report, that comes with a series of appeals that can be filed before that is actually enforceable. And those at this time are taking up to 2, 3, and possibly 4 years to get through the entire process, during which time the individual is allowed to remain in the country. And again, it is clear that once their refugee application has been pulled, that they are an imminent threat, that they are a danger to our community, and yet they're afforded that luxury of staying in the nation until that appeal process has gone all the way through. Now, the next screen I'm showing here is the new updated task force website that has been put up, and this is specific when it comes to the actual extortion task force and what's being done and what you can do if you are a victim. So more information coming out online. I've also seen bus stops and billboards around the city that are also really promoting the task force hotline so that people can reach out and get help. So here on this site of the BC government, you can find that there's the latest news. But under that, you'll find where they are letting you know what's going on with the current action in terms of involvement and the different agencies that are involved in the task force. So as you can see, Abbotsford Police, the Combined Special Forces, the Special Unit here for the province of British Columbia, the Delta Police Department, Metro Vancouver Transit Police, Surrey Police Services, Canadian Border Services Agency. There are other police forces as well throughout the Lower Mainland and across British Columbia that are involved in this. And I'll just make note that the majority of municipal policing in the province of British Columbia is actually done by the RCMP. The RCMP is contracted by these towns and cities to provide law enforcement, investigation, and enforcement services, community safety. All of those things fall under the auspices of the RCMP in British Columbia, which is quite different than, say, for Toronto or Ontario, where they have the provincial police there, the Ontario Provincial Police. Then most regional areas have their police forces, as well as Toronto, Peel, Mississauga. All of these different communities have their own independent police forces for municipal policing. So that's why when you see this, it's actually a much broader number of agencies when you look at the municipalities, because of the fact that, as I said, the RCMP are the ones that are contracted for most of the province of British Columbia, unlike other provinces within Canada. Now, they also go on to other areas that we've already covered, so I'm not going to really go into any detail on those, and that's support for victims of extortion with enhanced funding and programming, as well as increased funding and resources. As the police representative there stated, that the numbers are substantially down for November. However, in December, we've already seen 2 shootings, but we are halfway through the month. So again, as bad as that is, it does show that there is a decline in those numbers. And again, there's the other organizations and support for other federal programs that can help with the extortion problem as well. So again, there's just a lot of resources and information. If you have any concerns, by all means, go on to the BC government website. Just type in crime prevention, and you'll be able to find the link to the extortion task force here. And again, it gives you a great resource of information, how to handle extortion attempts in terms of reaching out to the police. And one other thing I found of interest in the reports that are coming out is that the Surrey Police Service has now confirmed that they are actually providing physical security for those who have been targeted and for others who are facing threats of extortion in the city. This is a step up from when certain individuals, including Mr. Nidger, who was killed at the Gurdwara several years ago, the RCMP were issuing the duty to warn notices while at the same time they were not providing any security or any type of enhanced monitoring. They were just essentially just saying, hire some private security and deal with this, but here we've informed you. So now we see that the police are actually much more active in providing protection for these individuals, for these businesses, and for the families. And that, I think, is also a big step forward to show the seriousness at which the law enforcement and the government agencies are taking this threat that's been ongoing now for quite some time. This poster here that is printable, it is again on that same site where you can actually print these off and put them up in your storefronts, put them up in your community to warn others, and they are available in various languages, including Punjabi. So if you live in, say, up in the Scott Road area and other places, Vancouver, where there is a large condensed population there, you're more than welcome to print these off from the government website and put them up. The government or the police are also extending invitation to people to do that, but they're also out there putting these different places as well to try and educate people on how to handle it. With that said, of course, the federal RCMP have also come out. They came out last week to announce that they did finally make an arrest in a November shooting that we had covered back at that time. And they arrested an individual who is now in custody, and the Crown Council has approved one charge against the suspect for alleged involvement in that shooting that took place in November here in Surrey. This was from the incident approximately 7:35 p.m. on November the 12th that the RCMP and the Surrey Provincial Operations Support Unit officers responded to the calls of the shooting, and that was again at a residence in Surrey. So once more, they have made an arrest in that. A 21-year-old Avtar Singh is in custody. He will be appearing again. It says December the 10th, but I haven't seen an update on what happened last week in court. But again, it's just showing that they are trying to get all the information now out, and they have also declared that they will be making it a lot more timely so that there's more information about what they're doing, about arrests that are being made, about dangers in the community, and suspects. As we heard in the statements, the the Canadian Border Services Agency has targeted 105 individuals from India who are here in Canada, and they believe have links to the extortion pandemic or the extortion epidemic across all across BC, but also, as we see, it extends as far south as California and across to Ontario, Brampton, and other regions throughout Ontario, Alberta, and now I've even heard that there are investigations now in Quebec. So it shows that it is quieting down for the shootings here in Surrey, but at the same time, we're seeing that it's branching out even further east in Canada. Back to you, Angus.
Yes, interesting actually, because again, if you sort of take a step back from all this, I mean, we often talk about this. One of India's more successful exports is this organised crime, particularly to Canada, it appears, and to some degree California. And again, you look at all the propaganda out in the public domain, and certainly a lot of the critics and the anti-Khalistanis that we see, whether it's certain podcasts that we've covered in the past, or whichever news outlets and Gaudy media outlets, or whatever, and even right-wing outlets, they're sort of almost failing to miss the key points here. And clearly, there is an issue with organised crime in Canada, and it is coming essentially from India. Now, you have to look at it, and again, all the propaganda sort of says, oh, it's these Khalistanis, they're all drug runners, they're all terrorists. But actually, is it really? And you only need to look at just even those pictures there, just that simple news report. The news report isn't all about Khalistani terrorists and the alleged drugs that they're running. It's all about Indian diaspora running around shooting up shops and exploiting and blackmailing shop owners, retailers. They're not Khalistanis. They're not even Sikhs. They are coming from the Indian diaspora. And again, as the actual evidence, not just propaganda, but the actual real world evidence that the mainstream news is reporting is that these people are being run by organised gangs, including the Bishnoi gang, itself a designated terrorist organisation, and again, likewise linked to the Indian government. So again, all the evidence, it's absolutely black and white. There is no ambiguity here. And again, and I often point to these podcasts that we've covered in the past. So look, just please, why don't you actually just, instead of spouting and regurgitating right-wing extremist propaganda that's actually being fed to you by the right-wing extremists in India, look at the facts on the ground. And even there was that whole Media Bazurgan article, had a whole section about the World Sikh Organisation, saying, oh, they're all a bunch of terrorists. You know, they were linked to Air India. They're linked to all this Khalistan terrorism. And yet, you look at that news report, and the World Sikh Organisation are there in numbers, speaking to the camera, contributing to that discussion about how can we protect our society here in Canada. Note, our society. In other words, they are integrated. They're trying to protect ordinary Canadians, including themselves, against the one actual terrorist organisation, the one actual party that is involved in this terrorism, that is exporting terrorism, exporting violence, that is shooting up the shops. That is the Indian Hindu extremists, these Hindutva extremists, via their proxies like the Bishnoi gang, etc. So again, as I said, it's really it's black and white here. And again, we just need to keep pointing this out. Sadly, it's clearly I don't think many right-wing extremists in Canada will be watching our channel, but hopefully that message does filter out through the mainstream media. Look, the problem isn't your Sikh population. The problem isn't the Khalistani campaigners. The problem is a lot clearer. It's these Indian-sponsored criminals, these terrorist gangs that are now causing your problems, that are shooting up your streets. And you can sense the frustration again. And again, we refer to this frustration regularly. This disjoint between Canadian politicians and the Canadian law enforcement. Now, the law enforcement are deeply frustrated, clearly, because they recognise this problem for what it is. It's exported Indian terrorism coming from Hindutva forces, etc. Ultimately, you say you go up the chain, it's the Indian government behind this. But ultimately, it is organised crime coming from India. It's not the Khalistan community. It's not the Sikh community. It's this community that we regularly refer to, and they're trying to do something about it. They are trying to pour all the resources, and fantastic now, unlike the UK, those people, particularly the Sikh Khalistanis, who are getting these threats, these threats to their lives, these warnings to their lives, they're actually now backing that up with physical resources, with actual security. We don't get that in the UK. In the UK, like it used to be in Canada, you get a threat to life warning, and it's like, well, we can't tell you who's threatening your life. We all know who it is, but we're not allowed to tell you. And by the way, you're on your own. You've got to look after yourself. Just change your route every day. Oh, well, thanks very much for that. Thanks for protecting me. Which is pretty appalling. But anyway, it's great to see that the Canadian law enforcement is actually now backing up these threats to life with actual physical resources to try and protect their citizens. Well done to them. But you can sense their frustration because on the one hand, they know the problem, they've recognised the problem, CSIS have recognised the problem. So all the actual entities on the ground know who the problem is and know who the real terrorists are, the real threat to Canadian society. And what are the politicians doing? They're shaking hands with the man at the top, the man who sits at the top of that tree of terrorism, Narendra Modi. So again, James, it's massive frustration, and again reflected here in the UK, and I would say not reflected in the US, but certainly reflected here in the UK, is our politicians say one thing and do absolutely nothing, where our law enforcement and intelligence agencies are banging their heads against all, saying, please, we know there is a threat here, will you please do something about it, and stop shaking hands with the people who are threatening our own citizens, James.
And I think that there is a certain level of it in the U.S. as well when it comes to trade over lives and trade over human rights. And that's the shame of it all, Angus, is the allowance of not only the transnational repression, the foreign interference, but also the human rights abuses, both here and on the Indian soil. And that's why there is such a need for Khalistan to break free and to become a sovereign nation, because they will show that they'll demonstrate through leadership and through action how a country can be all-inclusive while at the same time making sure that the government respects the rights of each and every individual within their borders.
Absolutely right. And talking of protection, I'm going to move on to my story now. And this is the US Marine Corps has a fantastic reputation, rightly so. I mean, as a Brit, obviously, I think our own Royal Marines are probably superior. But I would say that, of course, being a Brit, and I'd never say that to the face of a US Marine, and not least my next speaker in my story, who is, of course, a Sikh who has served in the US Marine. He's a former officer in the US Marine Corps. And he's spoken really powerfully, and I'm going to play the video of his speech. This is a guy called Captain Sukhbir Singh Toor. He's a retired captain from the US Marine Corps, and he served obviously with distinction, as Sikhs always do in the US Army. And he spoke in front of the US Religious Liberty Commission. And this, of course, relates to this same old story that we keep having to drag up. It's about the beards, and of course, Pete Hegseth, the defense minister in the U.S. administration, he came out with this memorandum just a couple of months ago, 2-3 months ago, saying he referred to beardies, no more beardies in the U.S. Army. And of course, referring to, well, it was a bit of a blanket thing. And I said at the time, it was a stupid, clumsy and rather ignorant comment, because ultimately I know where he's coming from. I've served. And of course, there is this expectation of discipline and self-grooming within an army. Certainly the Western armies of the US, Canada, Britain, we all say no beards because we must be clean shaven. There are practical issues like wearing a respirator, etc., etc. But of course, there are issues here when it comes to articles of faith. And of course, Sikhs come across this issue on a regular basis. And there has been dispensations in the US military for many, many years where Sikhs have been allowed to retain their facial hair, retain their beards. Along comes Pete Hegseth rather clumsily and says, right, we don't want any more beardies. Of course, referring to anybody, that you must be clean shaven, but forgetting the fact that there have been Sikhs serving in the US military and still who serve in the US military who have served with distinction and yet being able to operate perfectly effectively with their beards. So, of course, as this battle continues, this campaign continues to reinstate these special dispensations, this retired captain, Sukhbir Singh Toor, spoke in front of this commission and spoke very powerfully. And I want to play this because, again, it was I saw this a couple of days ago. I thought this guy. I certainly would not take this guy on. But anyway, here we go. Let me play this for you.
Our next witness, Sukhbir Singh Toor. Microphone is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners and members of the Chamber. My name is Sukhbir Singh Toor. I'm a resident of Dayton, Ohio. I served as an artillery officer in the United States Marine Corps from 2016 until my medical retirement this year, ultimately achieving the rank of captain. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today on the issues of religious freedoms in the U.S. Armed Forces. I'm a Sikh, a follower of the world's 5th largest organized religion. Sikhism is a monotheistic, independent faith founded in the 15th century in India. Sikhs maintain distinct articles of faith, including a turban, unshorn hair, and a beard, essential expressions of our religious identity. These articles of faith and my experience serving in uniform are what bring me before you today. From a young age, I knew I wanted to be a Marine. I never saw a conflict between my faith and my calling. Sikhism teaches the concept of saint soldier, someone committed to confronting injustice both morally and physically. For me, the Marine Corps is the most effective fighting force in the world, representing the pinnacle of military excellence. Yet when I chose to serve in 2016, I knew I would face a painful choice to cut my hair or remove my turban, because at the time, the Marine Corps, unlike other branches, had not made meaningful progress towards accommodations for members of the Sikh faith. Only years into my career, just before my promotion to captain, did I feel I had proven myself enough to even request a religious accommodation. An accommodation already routinely granted in the Army and the Air Force. Ultimately, it took a lawsuit in 2021 to compel the Marine Corps to recognize the constitutional right of myself and several other Marines, and in doing so, to reinforce those same rights on certain Muslims, Orthodox and Hasidic Jews, and other religious minority groups. I also want to be clear about what happened after I received my accommodation. My ability to lead Marines did not diminish in any way. On the contrary, serving as my full self made me more comfortable, more confident, and more driven to excel. I am living proof that having a Marine with a beard and a turban does not create chaos, undermine unit cohesion, or hinder mission accomplishment. My Marines judge me, as they should, on my competence, my character, my commitment, not the articles of faith I wear. Allowing me to serve authentically strengthened rather than weakened our team. This was not a personal fight for me, it was an American one. No young American from a religious minority should have to choose between their faith and their service to their country, especially when they're willing and able to wear the uniform of the United States Marine Corps. That promise of equal opportunity is not only constitutional, it is quintessentially American. Today, that promise is at risk again. As many of you know, the Department of War is revising grooming and accommodation policies related to beards in the military. On September 30th, Secretary Hegseth announced his desire for, and I quote, "no more beardos," end quote, referring to facial hair, even when religious, as, I quote, "superficial religious expression," end quote. A subsequent memo provided directives that raised significant concern. First, it requires recruits to meet grooming standards before requesting an accommodation, forcing religious minorities to violate their faith in order to request permission not to violate their faith. Second, it calls for the return to pre-2010 standards, a period before the modern era of religious accommodations began, and before the first 2 Sikh officers had received their waivers, one of which, immediately after receiving his waiver, did serve in combat effectively. Third, it proposed limiting religious waivers to non-deployable roles. Depending on how deployable is defined, this could effectively bar minorities from full participation in military operations. Each of these proposals threatens to reverse more than 15 years of progress that allows Sikhs and other religious minorities to serve honorably, capably, and without compromising their identity or beliefs. For these reasons, I respect and urge the Commission to defend the rights of Sikhs and all service members of faith and elevate this respectful request to the highest levels of our government. It is vital that any new policy that the Department of War and the service secretaries preserve fair, constitutional, and functional religious accommodation processes. Thank you for considering my perspective. God bless America, and I look forward to your questions.
So, yeah, I mean, a very powerful speech, and he sets it out very clearly. I mean, basically, he says, I can serve, I've served, and Sikhs have served for many, many years with distinction, and yet retaining our articles of faith. So why on earth can't we do it? Now, I get, I'm playing devil's advocate, as we've discussed this subject before. Playing devil's advocate, yeah, if it does limit your operational capability, if it does limit your abilities and your competence as a soldier, there is an argument. But as has been proven over and over again, there are ways around this. These Sikh soldiers have managed to prove not just their competence, but their superiority as soldiers. And I often say, give me an army of bearded Sikhs, beardos as Hegseth call them, and I'll take over the world. I mean, tell me, I'd be far happier having a whole platoon of Sikh soldiers behind me than just about any other military nation on the planet. But anyway, ultimately, this captain, or this former captain, he set his case very clearly, saying, look, loads of points that support his argument, but ultimately it makes him a better soldier because he's more motivated. If he's not forced to choose between his religion, his faith, and his country, he can then serve as a fully competent and fully committed soldier. And that's a very dangerous thing to do in any situation, is to force anybody in any situation to choose between their faith and their country, because ultimately it's more likely people will choose their faith, as has been demonstrated in many other scenarios, many of the contexts. So it is much, much better and a much better result for the US Army and all stakeholders involved to not force a Sikh soldier to choose between his faith or his country. Is accommodate both. There is room and there is the ability to accommodate both. And the end result is you end up with a far more committed, passionate soldier, motivated to serve his country. And these boys, they don't just serve their country, they serve their country with passion and distinction, as has been proved over and over again across many conflicts and throughout history. And it's not just the US military, it's all Western militaries, and particularly the British military, where again, Sikh soldiers have served with absolute distinction, not just in 2 world wars, but in all sorts of theatres of wars right across the world, across history. And again, it's a very proud heritage that not just the Sikh community should have in their soldiers. It's the Britain, certainly, and likewise the US, and of course Canada, let me wrap up all Western nations within which Sikhs have served in their own national militaries. It is to the nation's pride that these Sikh soldiers have served with both turbans and beards. And you only need to look at photographs from past conflicts of turbaned Sikhs with their full beards, their full facial hair, and many of them with rows of medals. Again, that just speaks for itself. So I think Pete Hegseth really just needs a metaphorical slap around the chops, as we say here in England, and say, look, wake up, mate. These guys are some of your best soldiers. It is cretinous, it is stupid, it is self-destructive to try and turn them away from your military, not least one of your elite units, the US Marine Corps. You need guys like this. You need guys like this who are not feeling bitter or resentful because they are forced not to be able to wear, they're forced to remove their articles of faith. If they're allowed to retain their articles of faith, you will find that they will be some of your best soldiers operating in your US military. So there you go, James. We revisit again. I suspect this whole thing is going to go away, because I think the weight of evidence, the weight of passion from not just the Sikh community but from the others outside the Sikh community, I've no doubt that his colleagues in the US Marine Corps will be fully behind this guy. Obviously they have a huge amount of camaraderie within the US Marine Corps, like in any military outfit, but they are a deeply proud unit, a deeply proud division of the US military. I have no doubt that you ask any member of the US Marine Corps and they will all support this guy. And I think Pete Hegseth has his work cut out. As I said in the introduction, there is no way I would take on a guy like this and try and defy him. Even just hearing this guy's words, I'm thinking, you know what, mate, if I was Pete Hegseth, I'd say, yeah, you win.
Absolutely. And I mean, let's take a look at this. I'm clean shaven. I got short hair, but you sure as hell wouldn't want me defending your nation out there in the trenches. What does it really matter when the religious accommodation has been fought for so many decades, and it's only 15 years since the Marine Corps allowed the exemptions, and now they're pulling it away. But in that 15 years, there was no lack of negative impact of allowing them to have their beards, to allow them to have the turbans, to allow them to be proud of practicing their faith and to be able to show their articles of faith. It has not impacted the military actions in any way, shape, or form. If anything, I believe exactly what he stated is that it's made him better. It's made him prouder. It's made him feel comfortable in his own skin, representing his people as an American. And when I say his people, as an American, I'm not saying as a Sikh, I'm not saying as anything else. I'm saying he is an American, and he is damn proud to stand tall, to put on that uniform, and to defend the United States of America. And that's what you need when it comes to a strong military.
Indeed. And there is almost a practical solution to this. I don't know how realistic it is, if there are enough Sikh soldiers in the US military. But then all you need to do is establish a Sikh regiment. I don't know what they call it in the US military, but here in the UK, we ourselves should have a Sikh regiment. Because if you have a Sikh regiment where the whole regiment, however numerous that regiment is they're all turbaned and bearded, you put them alongside any other regiment in your military, you go into a theatre of operations, and I'll absolutely guarantee which regiment will be superior out in that battlefield. And that'll be your proof. If you think operationally it weakens any unit to be turbaned and bearded, well, put it out there in the theatre of operations, and I think the proof will be very clear to see which unit would be the more superior. But anyway, let's move on to my second story. And again, this is a viral video that went round, and actually it's actually relevant to this and what we've been talking about, because here in the UK, our British Sikh population are viewed by the general public very, very positively. And again, we talk about we've had this huge sort of social upheaval to do with uncontrolled immigration, the right-wing backlash. We've had millions literally taken to streets against immigration, etc. And then on the extreme wing of the right wing, likewise, as we see in Canada and across the US and other parts of the world, Australia even, is the right wing have used this. It's been useful sort of ammunition to them to turn on our communities, our ethnic minority communities here in the UK and likewise across the diaspora. And but the Sikh community have actually stood out quite separately. Because again, I talk about the heritage of the Sikh community. It is very clearly, and it's something I didn't realise is almost embedded within British psyche, is that the Sikh community have done so much good work, and much of it below the radar. It's almost subliminal, the good work, the philanthropic work the Sikh community has done across our society has actually had a hugely powerful impact on the perception of the Sikh community within the British society. And again, it's not very obvious, and again, I use this word subliminal. It's almost, people don't recognise it. But you ask the average person. When I said I'm working with the Sikh community, I've talked to complete people with absolutely no connection to the Sikh community, and they sort of raised an eyebrow. Say, "Oh, we like Sikhs." I always hear this. "Oh, we like the Sikhs. They're good people." Again, it's just these throw-off comments, these cast-off comments that actually just belies the significance of how well the Sikh community hasn't just integrated, but they've contributed to our society. Now, this video I think is very symbolic of that. And it apparently went viral a few days ago, so some of you might have already seen this, but it does actually, it really typifies an innate feeling within British society towards the Sikhs.
Sikh people are the most honourable race he has ever come across. And as a little girl, he used to say to me in the East End of London, "If you are ever in trouble, go to a Sikh fan." I want to cry. And he will protect you. Oh, never go anywhere else. The Sikh men are the most honourable men.
Yeah. And actually, can I just say, as her daughter, I know always that you've always said to me that Sikh people have so much morality, honourable and morality. And that's the Japanese soldiers, when my father was invaded, were terrified of the Sikhs, because the Sikhs were morality. Such warriors. They were a warrior race.
Your grandfather was in the army?
My father, yes. And she always said to me, she always said to me that Sikh men had morality and respect.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know where this is. It looks like it's a cafe or somewhere in London. There's a Sikh gentleman, presumably with his wife, who's been approached by these two very ordinary Londoners. A lady, in fact, there's 3 generations of Londoners there. A baby, the baby's mother, and the grandmother. And they refer to how her own father served in Burma alongside the Sikhs and said that fighting the Japanese. Exactly, my grandfather likewise was fighting in Burma as well alongside the Sikhs against the Japanese. And as this lady says, the Japanese were terrified of the Sikhs for very good reason. I refer back to the story we've just been talking about with bearded Sikhs. Give me an army of Sikhs and we'll take over the world. Well, here you go. Just 2 very ordinary Londoners have just approached this Sikh couple in this, well, a cafe or wherever it is, it doesn't matter. And just outpoured this sort of thank you for being who you are, and of course this reference to morality. And so again, you can see how Sikh morality, the principles of Sikhi, we talk about them regularly, how they've become so sort of infused into British society that people recognise that they see a Sikh. And they felt compelled to go up to this couple and say, look, basically, thank you for being who you are. And likewise, my father, who served in Burma, as this lady says, always said, be afraid of the Sikhs. The Japanese were terrified of the Sikhs because of what sort of soldiers they were. So there you go, James. It's just a very simple vignette, to use that sort of little word. It's a very simple vignette that actually is so significant because it says so much. It speaks so much. It's so symbolic, actually, for the powerful message that the Sikhi has actually managed to get across, certainly British society. And as I say, in the context of rising hate crimes, the majority of British people are very, very proud of their Sikh community, and rightly so, James.
Absolutely. And whether it's in the military, whether it's in law enforcement, whether it's in social services or anywhere else, I mean, you always see the commitment of the Sikh community to give back, to help others, to stand for those who are unable to stand up and raise the voice for themselves. And this lady here just shows that it's generational, that this goes back generations. It's not something new. It's not something that has just all of a sudden appeared. It is something that many people have not realized over generations, and this is just further affirmation of the character of the Sikh community and the Sikh faith, and how much it means to those outside of the community to be able to come up and say, hey, thank you. And this is, and to share these stories, because I think that at the end of the day, it shows that there is not a fear of other people. It is acceptance. And the more that you understand the different religions, the different principles, the different faiths, the different backgrounds, the different countries, all these things, it opens your eyes to a new perspective on people. And that's what it's all about. It's not about race. It's not about religion. It's about people. And that's what's there. But yeah, just the character and the fact that, when you look at this lady, one last thing I'll say is that she'd probably do better signing up with Hegseth than I would.
Yeah, I think Pete Hegseth needs to listen. In fact, watch this video itself. I think he might just get an understanding that all the rest of us are saying thank you for being here. It's more that case. So anyway, James,
she could educate him very well.
I think she would. And good luck to Hegseth. I think she would give him that metaphorical slap around the chops. In fact, it wouldn't be metaphorical.
That's right.
Probably would be more physical. But anyway, right, let's move on to our comments column. Thank you to all our wonderful audience for all the contributions. There have been many. These came actually, I did an editorial at the end of last week instead of a podcast. Actually, it was an editorial about the theme of the editorial was about the danger of indifference and why people should actually support the whole concept of Khalistan, because of course you talk to many Sikhs and they've got more important things to worry about on a day-to-day basis. It's keeping food on the table, it's keeping a roof over their heads, etc., etc. But the whole theme was saying, look, that's appreciated, but you must also understand how important something like this is, because the impact on you personally and of course the rest of society could be enormous in a positive way if you all rally behind the whole concept of Khalistan. And anyway, so do watch that podcast. As I say, or that editorial. It brought out the importance of why you shouldn't be indifferent, and being indifferent is actually quite dangerous to be that way. Narinjit Singh Saini says it was an eye-opener. Well, thank you. I mean, I hope it was, because it was designed again just to sort of gently prod people, saying, look, please get out there and care. The message was, please care about these things because they do matter. And as Stay Safe says, look, politics is important because when you wonder why, as Stay Safe says, when your taxes suddenly go up or there's so many police around or legislation's brought in that you don't like, well, that's because the only way it'll ever change is if you care. And that's the message, James. We absolutely have to care.
Absolutely, and that's why we're here doing this show, Angus, is because we do have that mindset that we have to care about each other. We have to care about the world as it is and the world in the future. And of course, we care about the opportunities that could come with the sovereign nation of Khalistan. And we think that that would be a massive, massive benefit to the region, to the world, and it's something that should have happened back in 1947. It shouldn't be a struggle that's still ongoing to this day.
Yeah, and I think I said even in the editorial, it's not even specific to the Sikh community. It's just it's every society. The majority of people day to day don't care about politics. Again, they've got bigger things to worry about. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, you have to care to some degree. Otherwise, you just get walked over. Those who do care will then end up controlling your life and may not be in your best interest, as is often the case. So, now, Worldwide 875 says, I'm a Punjabi Jat Sikh. I support India. Well, again, my message to you is absolutely, that is your democratic prerogative. And that is the beauty, is if you live in a free society, you can say that out loud and everybody will support your right to say that. The problem that we have, though, and that we have to keep highlighting, is that in the Punjab and actually across India, is that you do not have that freedom to speak out like you have just done here in YouTube, which of course is a free platform to say pretty much what you want. But unfortunately, our whole argument is that Punjabi and particularly pro-Khalistan Sikhs in the Punjab are not able to stand up freely and say what you've just freely said here on this free platform. So, but ultimately, anyway, our job, James and I, our job is to try and persuade you as a Punjabi Jat Sikh, and as I certainly did in that editorial, is to say, look, you are suffering from this what's called Stockholm syndrome, which is basically is that you have become so indoctrinated by your actual captor that you don't recognise the prison cell, the bars that hold you within your own prison cell, and that is not true freedom. You are given crumbs, which you think is actually you being taken care of. In fact, you actually reside, it's your captor feeding those crumbs, and you need to wake up. So, but as I say, Worldwide, that is your prerogative, and all we're trying to do is trying to wake you up to the reality that you live in. James, I guess you feel the same.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's also the beauty of the referendum when it comes to Khalistan, is that everybody has the opportunity to vote yes or no. It's not that we are promoting you have to vote yes. We are saying get out there and have your voice heard. And that is the same when it comes to human rights, when it comes to any other issue, not just within the Sikh community or in India. We see human rights as being violated in Russia. We see them being violated in China. We see this in North Korea. We see it around the world. And it is I would say further than a right, it's an obligation of those with the freedom to have their voices heard, to speak out for those who have been silenced.
Yeah, and again, the message to Worldwide is, look, yeah, fine, absolutely, it is your prerogative, but you have to ask yourself the question, the people in Delhi making the decisions that affect your life on a day-to-day basis, are they making those decisions in your best interest or in Delhi's best interest? And again, I think that's a rhetorical question. I think the answer speaks for itself. So anyway, Bobby Singh, thank you, Bobby, for your comment. Khalistan will be a blessing for everyone, absolutely. Just like it was at the time of Ranjit Singh. It would be much better without Delhi. Well, refer back to the previous comment. You would be better off without Delhi. It's Punjab is under siege from the RSS, and the best option is to separate from the RSS. But Rupa Sandhu comes back, and Rupa Sandhu featured a lot in one of the shows last week, who was clearly offering a counter-narrative and didn't agree with many things that were being said. And as Rupa Sandhu says, if you know about Ranjit Singh, then why go after India? You should be going after Pakistan. It's back to this old argument about, well, look, Punjab, old Punjab used to include a large part of Pakistan, including, of course, Lahore. And as Rupa Sandhu says, as a Jat Sikh, our community is not educated on Sikh history or the British genocide. And instead, we're just buying Western Pakistani propaganda to fight internally. In other words, your argument is saying, look, as Pakistan and the West are feeding the Sikh community in the Punjab with all this propaganda, propaganda to try and turn us against each other. Well, I don't think that's actually strictly true, because I think the propaganda isn't coming from us. We're trying to tell you the truth. We're trying to wake you up to the truth. The propaganda isn't coming from our side. It's actually coming from India. There will be some obviously coming from Pakistan, but ultimately it's not coming from the West. We are trying to highlight the fact that India, the Godi media, you only need to look at the Godi media to think, really, do you honestly think they are telling you the truth? Because there is only one narrative in India that all the mainstream media give you, spoon feed you. It is a pro-Modi narrative. Dissenting voices are not allowed in India. Any real, genuine dissenting voices that hold the Indian government to account are closed down. So ultimately, who is feeding you propaganda? That's the proof, James.
Absolutely. And the irony of it is that the ones that are spreading propaganda are also saying, we're telling you the truth. We wouldn't.
Yeah, of course we wouldn't do that.
I just found that amusing, because it's just, we're trying to just spread the truth out there. And by all means, we do get it wrong on occasion. And we invite our viewers to correct us when we do get things wrong, because we want to make sure that we get it right, because we're on a learning curve. We are learning. And that's what's unique about our show, is it's a couple of pasty old white guys that are learning about the Sikh culture, learning about the history of Pakistan and India, and all the different things that has entailed over the generations. So again, it's all about trying to spread the truth, and again, being interactive and open with our audience, so that if we do get something wrong, that you can correct us. And by all means, we love that, regardless as to what your comments are, we love that you interact with us, because it allows us to continue to learn from that regard as well. So thanks for posting those comments.
What I find particularly interesting, actually, is this comment: as a Jat Sikh, our community is not educated on Sikh history. Well, I'll leave that up to our audience to comment otherwise. Is your community educated on Sikh history? My experience is actually quite the opposite, is that the Sikh community is deeply educated and knowledgeable and aware of its own history, particularly obviously the gurus. It's a fundamental part of being a Sikh, is to understand the history of all the gurus and everything that came along with that. The Khalsa, the establishment of the Khalsa, the 5Ks, that whole history. I'm surprised at this comment, and I hope our audience can maybe advise James and myself on that. Is that true? Is the Sikh community not educated on its own history? Well, we'll see. Let's see what our audience has to say on that. Now, Critics Corner, of course, does make a spectacular return with Rupert Sandhu himself, who does actually make this one. The last comment didn't, but this one did. Funny, a British white dude giving more divide and conquer propaganda for his people so he can continue hurting Sikhs and Hindus. Well, this is, we often see a comment like this. We British white dudes trying to divide and conquer. Well, I think that the simple answer to that is it's not me and James that are here to divide and conquer, because believe it or not, it's easily provable, because we are part of Satluj TV, which is a Sikh channel. It is a Sikh channel, a Sikh funded channel, a Sikh controlled channel. All the decisions are controlled and made by Sikhs, not by white or Westerners or whatever, or it's Sikhs in the Western diaspora. But ultimately, it's not white people, we white dudes, we're not the ones making these decisions. James and I were brought in, the clue's in the name of perspective, the name of the show, to provide an outside perspective, an objective perspective on issues affecting the Sikh community. That's why we're here. We're not here to divide and conquer. We're just to say it how we feel it, and hopefully that does come across in our show. So ultimately, no, it's not us doing the divide and conquer. The divide and conquer, as Gurpreet says, it's the Hindus and the Muslims. It's probably less the Muslims, more the Hindus. Certainly the Hindutva extremists, who are actually the ones who are projecting this divide and conquer agenda, which again we talk about regularly. The BJP government, that is how they basically got into power and maintaining power, and are trying to drive this Hindutva agenda through divide and conquer, James.
Absolutely. And if you want a real lesson in divide and conquer, I'll introduce you to the ex-wife's lawyer. He knew how to divide up that money in her favor and conquer everything.
And batter you over the head.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, we're not here to divide and conquer. We're not here to really to create a divide anywhere. We are here to speak the truth as we learn it and we understand it and we appreciate it, and we are open to correction. So I would love to know further detail, if you can articulate why it is that you think that we are hurting the Sikhs and the Hindus. By all means, feel free to respond in further depth.
Yeah, and as we often have to reiterate, we're not here to divide, we're here to unite. Ultimately, the only division we're trying to create is the division between the vast majority of the Indian people, and that includes every part of India, whatever their ethnicity or religious faith, is to wake them up to what is going on in India. It's the ruling elite, the Hindutva ruling nationalist extremist elite, who are controlling your lives and not in your interests. It's for the interests of the upper caste Brahmanical elite. That's all we're trying to do. Ultimately, we're trying to unite rather than divide. And then final section, Nirmal Singh, thank you Nirmal, for one of our regulars down in Australia. The only solution, Khalistan, nothing less than Khalistan, the double-headed snake of Hindutva. The Hindustan terrorist government should be destroyed once and for all. So the only answer is Khalistan, and as Hap B says, waiting for Khalistan, can't wait to contribute. Now that's important, because ultimately, yes, there is this huge dam holding back the huge Sikh community, desperate to build, to create, to contribute to the success of Khalistan, James.
Absolutely. And, we're looking forward to being a part of experiencing it from a journalistic side, to watch how it takes shape, how it succeeds, and how everybody comes together to make it one of the greatest places. So.
And Harjit Bain says, thank you for sharing your genuine, compassionate thoughts with Sikhs. Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for your comment. With appreciation, I wish you well. Of course, likewise, we turn that back on our audience. And of course, we wish our audience very well and all the success. And the Avatar Dylan's comment, really, of course, as we quickly approach Christmas, you say, hope you and your family have a great Christmas. Thank you. And the same to you and yours and all our audience's families. Do have a great Christmas. And it's just actually a timely reminder to say, and in fact, James, we haven't even discussed this yet, is that next week, it is the Christmas week here in the Western Christian world, and so we as a channel will be closing down just for a week or so over the Christmas period. So don't panic, we haven't gone away, touch wood. We're still there. We're just having a little break with our families to celebrate Christmas, as indeed I know many Sikh families will be doing likewise. But anyway, we'll sign off finally. I think Friday will be the final show, or Thursday will be the final Perspectives. There'll be a final show on Friday as well, when we'll do our final Christmas sign off. But yeah, James, it's we're down for a week next week.
Relaxation.
we need a break. It's been a long, hard year, so hopefully we've earned a little bit of a break. So as indeed I'm sure our audience,
it's all good.
I'm sure our audience need a break from us for at least a week anyway. So, and then the final sign off goes to Amrik Singh, one of our regulars. Thank you, Amrik. Waheguruji brilliantly explained. Salute you. Well, salute you and salute our audience. We couldn't do this show without you. Thank you very much indeed. And Khalistan Zindabad, James, our positive final sign off for the day, as always.
As always, and we love to leave it on that positive note.
Indeed we do. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. That's it for another day. Do keep your comments coming, and don't forget you can, of course, message us directly at message@satellodgetv.com if there's things you'd like to bring to our attention, as many of you have been doing. Thank you very much for those of you who have sent links and stuff. You know who you are. But that's it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We'll see you next time.